my fellow horror and thrill enthusiasts, and welcome back to Woonoo, your weekly Universal news and updates. If you don't already know, I make weekly edits of all of the changes I can find in Universal Orlando and upload them for your enjoyment. And this week, with the Halloween Horror Nights testing event happening, I have even more scary updates than ever before. So what are we waiting for? Let's get into some updates with our first topic. So with the fact that this testing event happened this week, I obviously had to start with the biggest topic of the week, Halloween Horror Nights. Before I start on the updates, however, I just wanted to say two things. The first is, so much happened this week regarding to HHN that I actually had to split some of it into the other topics so the video will be more evenly divided. So if you're here just for the spook, keep watching to get the full scoop on Halloween at Universal. The second thing is, since I had so many HHN updates, I'm going to move through the week bit by bit and split this section into a timeline. The three sections on this timeline will be prep for the event, which was Monday, September 14th to Thursday, September 17th, the Premiere Pass Preview Day, which was Friday, September 18th, and the actual event itself, which was Saturday and Sunday, or September 19th and 20th. So looking at the setup that took place for this testing event, we can start at where we left off last week. The HHN entrance structures received TVs on their tops and black curtains to cover up signs for the houses, and later in the week had signs installed under these curtains for each of the mazes. By Thursday, however, the curtains were pulled back and the signs were shown, scare warnings and all. But what's the point of a queue entrance to the house if there's no queue? Well, the answer is none. So to fix this problem, Universal brought out a large amount of fences to place a switchback section at the Bride of Frankenstein Lives queue. This entire queue in front of Music Stage Plaza also has social distancing markers in it to make sure guests are 6 feet apart while waiting. Next to this queue, Universal drove in 2 food trucks this week. They ended up going to the exit of the bride's house and by the entrance to the Tooth Fairy house. At the time that these were put in, we had no clue what they would serve, but this would be revealed later. However, if you want to know the food that these trucks have, you'll have to see it in the food section later in the video. Next for the HHN prep is some smaller but spooky decorations. In the studio store, some black and orange garland and banners were hung around the ceiling to add some decoration. And down the street at Cafe La Bamba, some fall leaves and pumpkins were put over their entrance archway. Later in the week, some spooky signing marking the entrance and exit to something would also appear. However, what that will become, I'll also be talking about in the food section of the video. Finally, for the prep days, Universal brought in some new merchandise carts to the parks that sell general Halloween Horror Nights merchandise that would usually be sold in the tribute store. Okay, so now we're on to the second period of our timeline, the Employee and Premiere Pass Holder Preview Day. So not much that doesn't sort into a different category happened on this day, as even though the Premiere Pass holders and employees got to go through the houses, they couldn't film it due to it being a testing event. In fact, no photos or videos were allowed to be taken inside either of the 2 houses during any of this event, whether you went during a preview or on the actual weekend itself. The news this did bring us, however, is what Universal is trying to do for the HHN houses. People who went through the houses noticed 3 major changes from the normal operation. Pulsing was used to make sure that you would be stopped at the end of each room to let the party in front of you go and get a head start in the next room. Glow sticks were handed out to the leader of each party so ops could tell parties apart. And the biggest change was that all scare actors were behind solid sheets of plexiglass. A lot of people said these changes didn't affect the experience too much, but that it still feels different from normal HHN. Also, on the Premiere Pass Day, Universal opened another U-Rest area in New York by Revenge of the Mummy to help horror-goers with a close-by place to remove their face coverings. Not much else happened on the Premiere Preview Day other than a lot of new food becoming available to guests, but yet again, I'll talk about that later. So that only leaves the third period of our timeline, which is the actual weekend event itself. On both Saturday and Sunday, both parks hit capacity for the second time ever, and it was pretty obvious where the crowds were going. The standby queue for both of the houses filled almost instantly both days of the event, with the virtual slots all being taken up just 30 minutes afterwards. Universal actually tried to update their app to put the house's queue times in it, but after filling them so fast, decided just to do away with this update. The lines would continue to instantly fill and all of the virtual spots to be taken within the blink of an eye for until about 6 or 7 at night, both days of the testing event. Even though the spots were taken quickly, the virtual line system seemed to work quite well, as most standby and virtual line guests reported not having to wait over 2.5 hours for either of the houses. But virtual lines isn't all that was new on this weekend. Some drink stands were brought into the queues so that guests could buy cold beverages while waiting, and at the exit of each house, a team member was stationed to survey guests on their haunted house experience. This is a test event, after all. But we also can't forget about the other parks with this seasonal event, as Islands of Adventure had some stuff too. On the weekend, they had trick-or-treating in a large variety of gift shops that include the Cat in the Hat, Island Trading Company, Mulberry Street, Toon Extra, the Dino Store, Comic Book Store, and a few others I can't remember at the moment. The way trick-or-treating works is if you are 12 or under, when you enter, you can pick up a candy bag and look for one of the designated trick-or-treating stores. You then go to the marked basket inside and just grab some candy. So that's actually it for the main things that happened during this event. But if you want to hear more Halloweenish updates, stick around, because this isn't the end at all. Just before we talk about that, I also wanted to quickly say, even though this event provided quite successful for Universal, and I hope they do another one, this might have been a one-and-done scenario. I don't know, but hopefully it isn't, as I think myself and everybody else loved this HHN Lite. But speaking of light, you want to know what isn't light? The amount of calories and all the new food that I'll be talking about in my next topic. This week's food! I finally get to talk about some spooky treats that we can now get in the parks, and some of the most major food updates I've ever covered on the channel happened this week. I don't even know where to start, so I guess I'll go in the same order as I mentioned the food to you earlier, and start with the selections that were served out of the food trucks starting on the Premier Pass holder preview days and moving on through the weekend. Both trucks had two special food offerings. The first truck's offerings were Franken fried chicken and funnel brains, and electric fried skin and guts. The Franken fried chicken and funnel brains is a fried chicken topped funnel cake with a berry glaze and powdered sugar. And the electric fried skin and guts is a pork rind nachos topped with spiced ground beef and scallions. The second truck serves the HHN favorite of twisted taters, a large twisting tater tot that is served on a stick, along with Franken coils, which is just a twisted tater with a hot dog down the middle. Both of these come with the option of adding blood and guts, which is just chili queso, to make them even more delicious. The next food update is just as major as having 4 new food products, and I would dare say is even more major than that. The previously closed Cafe La Bamba suited up this week and became the Skeleton Bar. At the entrance of the shop, you can walk off to the right to see their spooky food options that include the Incantation Shrimp Cocktail, Bloody Charred Tandoori Skewer, Screaming S'mores Fries, and Vegan Jacked Up Mac. I don't even know what's in these because I couldn't find a complete in-depth meal review, but these all look super good if I do say so myself. Then to get the actual drinks in the Skeleton Bar, you have to walk through a super cool haunted room that has some skeletons and other decorations to spook you to the bone. Once you get to the actual Skeleton Bar, you have a choice between 3 different drinks: the Circus Peanut, Mango Inferno, and Loop Garu. Sorry if I butchered any of those names. I'm not the most knowledgeable when it comes to the names of alcoholic drinks. To continue the spooky food, we can head over to the San Francisco Candy Factory and take a quick look at their fudge selection. A new pumpkin pie fudge has made an appearance for purchase, so if you want to try that out, make sure to. And my final food update actually isn't in the Studios Park, but instead in Islands of Adventure. At Natural Selections, a new guava and cheese pastille has become available, and it looks super good. I mean, just look at that cheese and tell me you don't want one. So that's all the food updates I have this week, and since we're already in Jurassic Park land, how about we take a small break from the Halloween updates and look at this week's construction progress. With all the spooky changes that are happening this week, it can be easy to forget about Universal's other huge project that they're working on, the Velocicoaster. This week for the Velocicoaster, we have something huge that happened instead of something huge being installed. A section of one of the trains was removed from the maintenance barn and is being pull tested along the track. As of the time I'm recording this, they still haven't made it all the way around the track yet, but pull testing is a slow and steady process that can't be rushed. But while some of the workers are busy testing the carts, the rest of the site has been busy on the details. This week, a lot of the tarps that were covering the rock work were finally removed, revealing almost a mountain of detailed rock work. Also new on the site this week is the perimeter wall support beams that were actually signed by cast members are now being painted over in a deeper shade of gray, similar to the back walls of the station building. Speaking of the station building, this week on top of the section of the building by Burger Dig, the metal structures we saw installed 2 weeks ago have extended outwards, making a completed box. At the bottom of the station building, we can also now see where the fence-like pieces we saw lowered onto the site last week were installed, and they are in fact not a fence and instead just a decorative arch. Also, the Osprey War might be back soon, as the Ospreys have started hanging out on top of the top hat again. No moves have been made to remove them yet, and there aren't any nests, but they're just vibing up there. In other news for construction, we finally have some progress on the Forbidden Journey lockers. Some rock work has started at the bottom of the building this week, though it stayed in its early stages. Also, some new metal bars were installed against the main wall that stand vertically. You want to know what else stands vertically? Scarecrows. I mentioned scarecrows because they play a pretty big role in this video's next topic. General news, which this week continues the spooky trend that most of the other updates have had. This week, 2 smaller events are taking place. The first of these 2 is the Scarecrow Stalk. Until the 1st of November, guests will be able to go on a Scarecrow Stalk, which is a scavenger hunt to find 13 different scarecrows around Studios Park. They are all located in different gift shops around the parks and have a team member who will stamp your pamphlet at each scarecrow you find. If you find all 13, you can turn in the map to get a free candy bag on your way out. The second news event type update I have is this week another signing event will be taking place where you can have your purchase signed by the 4 creators of the artist series Jack the Clown Prince. This event took place from 1 to 4 on the 22nd of September, so yes, by the time this is uploaded, it has already happened. But if we can have our merchandise signed, it's probably best to know what merchandise is available, right? Well, that's exactly what I cover in our next topic. All of the new merchandise. Yes, this week we have even more new merchandise like the normal, and even some new non-spooky stuff. But I'm in the Halloween type mood, so let's start with what we can now find in the Tribute Store. This week added to the Tribute Store is a line of new random merch. In the Beetlejuice room, some new food has come, with sour watermelon cotton candy and gummy eyeballs making a debut to the cobweb-covered shelves. And even more new for Beetlejuice is that the main Beetlejuice print has been turned into an artwork. But this beauty isn't the only new artwork found in the store this week. Now up for purchase is an HHN-themed map artwork, and 4 new artworks that have prints on them, such as the HHN 8 logo, Halloween Horror Nights 26 logo, Halloween Horror Nights 4 logo, and a Horror Nights pinball machine print. Also now purchasable in the Tribute Store is new HHN throwbacks Chance the Clown and Terra Queen shot glasses. The The Horror Inc. added to its army of prints this week too, as a new Wolfman and Gillman t-shirts. And finally in the tribute store this week, over the weekend, for some reason, the Mold-O-Ramas were only taking card payments and not cash. Random as heck, but hey, people are here for all the changes, right? Next up is some non-scary merchandise that came out, because unlike last week, we actually have some. This week we added 2 new face masks to the collection of them that Universal has made. These are simply designed with the logo, but they do look pretty cool. And our final merchandise update is we now have retro Markley trading cards sold around the park. So that's all the big updates I could find around the park this week, but that doesn't mean I didn't find small things too. So what small things changed at uni this week? Well, starting off this week, we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone in Islands of Adventure. Some maintenance is happening to the entrances of both Camp Jurassic and Poseidon's Fury, just different kinds. Poseidon's Fury is most likely just getting some damage repaired, and Camp Jurassic entrance is probably prepping for some new paint. Going over to the Studios Park, our next small thing is that the lights in the tribute store were turned on this weekend. They usually remain off even though they are always there, so it's nice to see them turned on and making the shop look the best it can. If we walk over to Springfield, we can get an example of our next update, which is that outside some of the more popular restaurants, Universal has placed down extra social distancing markers than they had at them previously. Going over to London, now we can see that at this Harry Potter merchandise stand, some festive garland has been placed. I thought this was Halloween, not Christmas. Finally, to end our small updates, when leaving Islands of Adventure this week, they had placed a sign advertising that the houses in the other park were at capacity, just in case anyone was thinking of making the trek over to see if they were opened up. So that's all the changes I could find in Universal this week, and boy has there been a lot of changes. I'm gonna be honest, I'm quite tired of recording right now, so I'm gonna just keep this outro short and sweet. If you like me, please leave a like and subscribe. It makes you cool, I promise. And with all of that said and done, this is Wunu, signing off.